I'd like to resume the September 9th, 2019 meeting of the Matthews Town Council and call it to order. We'll start with the safety minute. There's a lot of folks in here this evening. If we need to evacuate, we'll go out the back doors. There's a stairwell on the right, rear of the lobby, and also to the left in the lobby. Go down the stairs, out the front or back door, respectively, and assemble away from the building. Please watch for any emergency vehicles. There is also a defibrillator outside to the right of the dais that is available for us to use. I don't see any police officers this evening, so it has self-instructions, and hopefully we won't have to use that. If you have any papers or briefcases or anything, please put them under the chair in front of you, so if we do have to evacuate, there's no one tripping on their way out. With that, I'd like to turn to Commissioner DeMint for the invocation this evening.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. Some time ago, when I had the honor of having the invocation, I read this poem. And since that time, I have been requested a number of times by people that I would see to do it again. And so I've chosen tonight to do that for some reasons that we have here in the audience. The poem that I'm going to read to you is reportedly written in the home of Mother Teresa's room, and also in her home for children in Calcutta, India. We think it was originally taken by someone who wrote a similar poem. His name is Kent Keith, but the second half was rewritten by Mother Teresa in a more spiritual way. But it resonates with me from a volunteerism standpoint and those who just want to make the world a better place. So if you'll bear with me while I read this. People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives, but be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends and some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and sincere, people may deceive you, but be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight, but create them anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, some may be jealous, but be happy anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten, but do good anyway. Give the best you have, and it will never be enough, but give your best anyway. In the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bent. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, at this time, I'd like to call on our Assistant Town Manager, Becky Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and will Beth join me up at the podium? Mayor and members of the board, I am so happy to introduce to you tonight Beth Blair, who is our new Finance Director. Beth comes to us with over 40 years of experience in the nonprofit, private, as well as public accounting sectors. Prior to coming to the town, she was most recently the CFO for Charlotte Works and was also, prior to that, the Senior Vice President of Finance at Child Care Resources. She's a graduate of Clarion University and received her executive MBA from Baruch College. And Beth became a Matthews resident a couple of years ago when she relocated to the area from Pennsylvania with her husband and daughter. And we are just so happy to have her with us in the finance director role. So please join me in welcoming Beth.
I just want to say thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. As Becky said, we've lived here for 4 years and really love the town of Matthews. So I'm really honored and pleased to work with the Board of Commissioners and serve the town, and look forward to working with everyone. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Beth.
you.
Our next item is recognition of Constitution Week. And I'd like to ask a group of ladies to come up to the front. Any and all? Okay. And you're with the Daughters of the American Revolution?
Yes, sir.
And why don't we get everybody's name?
Go ahead. I'm Marie Lang.
Courtney Lane.
Suzanne Hart.
Kathy Eichenbrenner.
And Catherine Lang.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have a proclamation this evening in recognition of Constitution Week 2019, and I'd like to read this for the audience. Whereas September 17, 2019 marks the 232nd anniversary of the framing of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and the anniversary of its creation, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17 through 23 as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Paul F. Bailey, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the town of Matthews, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17 through 23rd as Constitution Week in Matthews, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals the framers of the Constitution had in 1787. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the great seal of the town of Matthews on this 9th day of September in the year of our Lord 2019. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
On behalf of the Daughters of the American Revolution, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to Matthews, North Carolina, for your partnership in making Constitution Week 2019 memorable. Some of the activities that we've done to promote Constitution Week and promote Matthews with it is we participated in the Matthews Alive Parade with our very own Constitution Week float, and we gave out 2,000 flags. And on August 23rd through September the 30th, Constitution Week displays in the entrance of the library, and I would like to thank Lori for all her help assembling the display. And September 1st through the 30th, we're having a Constitution scavenger hunt down in the library for children, and when they complete the scavenger hunt, they receive a flag. And Matthews Library patrons will receive a preamble of the Constitution bookmark. And then, of course, today we're getting our proclamation. And then we're having, and please bring your children to this, on September the 14th, we're having a Constitution program from 11 to 11:30 down in the Matthews Library Community Room. And we're actually going to have George Washington there to take pictures with the kids. And we're going to be debuting our newest superhero, Captain Constitution. Attendees receive a patriotic gift bag. And then last but not least, on September the 15th, we're going to be placing 100 Constitution-themed rocks down at Squirrel Lake Park, and we invite you all to go find them and enjoy them very much. So thank you very much for your partnership, and we look forward to serving this vibrant community in the future.
And I assume these rocks will look like this.
Yes, and they're going to look just like
They have a
that.
front and a back to them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we hid rocks on the desk.
So let's give these ladies a round of applause for the effort that they
you. Thank you. We appreciate it. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda are items to be added to the agenda. Mr. Manager?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Under the consent agenda 16A, that says consider speed trailers. We'd like to amend that to read approve speed trailers since it's part of the consent agenda. And then under 14B2, public improvement variance. That was an oversight on our part that we should have had included in the agenda.
Okay, Mr. Buckley, do we need a motion to change the
Yes.
wording? Okay, do we have a motion to first change the wording of item 16E from consider purchase to approve purchase of safety equipment?
So moved. Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And the second item is the addition of item 14B2 to the agenda. Do we have a motion? This is public improvement variance. Do we have a motion to add that item to the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, thank you, Mr. Manager. Next item is public comment, and I understand that we did not have anyone sign up for public comment, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, and we will recess the regular meeting for public hearing on a special assessment for Acacia Street, Cochran Woods Lane, Jerry Lane, and Lightwood Drive, all located in the Streamside subdivision. Do we have such a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So we are now seated in public hearing on the special assessment.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, members of the board, C.J. O'Neill's not here tonight, so I'm stepping in to give you guys a brief overview. Yep, thanks. So this is the public hearing process or step and then eventual approval of the resolution. So we put together a petition that we circulated with the community. And Lori, if you could go down to the map. And after really further discussion, we did come to the conclusion that some of this road, you see there Lightfoot down there in the blue, I guess the hatched blue, that really can or should qualify as more of a community street as opposed to just a subdivision street. So we did feel like it was appropriate that the town take responsibility of paving that, and then the rest of the area that's in a type of an orange, that cost is then divided with all the other remaining lots in the subdivision, and we circulated that petition, and we got the proper percentages of folks that were willing to do this. So now we're at the public hearing stage.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, if I may clarify quickly, those blue lines are still a part of the project cost. It's the percentages based on responsibility of the town and those who are abutting the streets.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Are there any questions for the manager or for Mr. Buckley? Okay, seeing none, we are in public hearing, and therefore there is an opportunity for the public to come and speak in support or opposition to this special assessment. So if you would like to speak in support or opposition, you may come up to the podium. Please state your name and your address for the record, and you may address the board. Anyone want to speak in support or opposition? Okay, seeing none. Is there a motion to go back into regular meeting?
So moved. Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is recognition of the planning board, and I'll call on Mr. Jay Camp, our planning director, for that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Here on the front row, Planning Board, Natasha Edwards, Carrie Lamson, and Larry Whitley. On the second row, Mike Rowan, Jonathan Clayton, Mike Foster, and our chair, David Weiser.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so the next item on the agenda is to recess the regular meeting for public hearing on applications to amend the UDO and the land use map of the town of Matthews. Do we have such a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So we are now in public hearing with the town board and the planning board. The first item is item 12A, zoning application 2019-699. Brigman and others to change the zoning from BH to ENT on that certain property designated as 1364 Matthews Mint Hill Road and being further identified as tax parcel 215081-07. Mr. Camp.
All right, thank you once again. Members of the board, everyone here in attendance, the application before us this evening is actually, it's a response from the applicant to a zoning motion that the town began earlier this year for multiple parcels, looking at conformance to the land use plan and need to potentially rezone some land. The town has currently a zoning motion 2 on our website, which is a pending zoning for changing the zoning for this parcel to R15. The applicant has submitted a change of zoning application to zone the parcel to the ENT district. The purpose would be to avoid the rezoning to R15. ENT would be in conformance with the town's small area plan for the area. I'll let you get that. This is also the first time the town's early designation process would be employed since we incorporated the UDO, or adopted rather, in 2014. What does early designation mean? In essence, it's rezoning light. It's a less intensive process to rezone property, so you don't need to provide a specific site plan or specific architectural elevations. So you essentially put the zoning in place, and then site plan and architectural approval comes at a later date. Just a couple of items here of note. Remember that if this zoning were to move forward, the board still has future plan and architectural approval in the future. Allowed uses that would be proposed on the site would include everything in the ENT district, so everything allowed in the ENT zoning classification. However, any lodging that is proposed would need to meet certain criteria. I think you all have probably seen that in the zoning package. There's some additional language that talks about design elements. And let me back up for a moment. The proposal would be for the design of any structure on this property to at least mimic the apartments that are currently under construction just a little bit down the road. Excuse me here. The ENT apartments that are currently under construction, the intent would be to kind of match the architecture there for some continuity. For lodging, there is a requirement that lodging would include elements supportive of the Matthews Sportsplex. These elements could include items such as a pool, exercise room, meeting space, on-site food and beverage options, or other guest services. So the intent would be that any lodging that was potentially developed here would provide amenities for guests that are here potentially to visit the Sportsplex, or they're in town for a weekend. And then I know I don't have a zoning map here, but just in brief, the zoning surrounding the property, we have BH zoning here adjacent to Independence Boulevard, BH zoning here at the bowling alley. This is Sports Parkway. And then we have a 34-acre ENT zone parcel just around the corner from the site here where the apartments are currently under construction. So I know this is a little bit of an unusual staff report because we are working with the applicant on the zoning application. So this is the site plan that staff has generated. The zoning language, however, is coming from the applicant, so we've been working in tandem on this request. So with that, I'll take any questions you all have at this time.
Any questions for Mr. Camp, Mr. Miller?
Thank you. Jay, the parcel over here to this side, is that already built out as Woodspring, or am I misplacing this somehow?
You're correct. This is an older aerial. This is probably from 2016 or 17.
So Woodspring is right here currently?
Correct.
Okay. If I can just make one small comment on the lodging to the board and people in the room, I would want to enhance meeting room availability and banquet facilities as an asterisk perhaps in the need of the hotel, because if there's going to be sports tournaments at the Sportsplex, they're going to need meeting rooms for their banquets and awards and things like that. And so banquet facilities and meeting rooms are my opinion that might be an item listed under lodging. That's all I have.
All right.
Mr. Urban?
Jay, to piggyback on that, we talked about this in our meeting about a week ago. How do you intend to depict this or create a hierarchy or work with the language with the petitioner? Because right now the proposed language says such elements might include, and that's very vague. So are you going to set up a bar of terms and then they will be allowed to choose 3 out of 6, 4 out of 6, or hit as many as they can? How do you plan to sort of set up the definitions of lodging?
Right, that's a great question. So we've been sort of wordsmithing this language for a few weeks now via email. You will note in the consent agenda, staff has created a zoning motion to provide some additional requirements for lodging facilities within the town. We have some firm square footages proposed. That might be a good starting point for us to look at creating a little more definition if there's some kind of concern that it's a little bit too vague today. We'd be happy to look at that.
Any other questions for Mr. Camp? Okay, do we have the petitioner here, or would they?
Planning board?
Excuse me, does the planning board have any questions? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I'm Bob Henderson with Henderson, Nystrom, Fletcher, and Tidings, 831 East Moorhead Street in Charlotte. First, I would like to thank Mary Jo and Jay for an extraordinarily collaborative process. I think it is going to work very well for the town. We've received additional input tonight, for which I thank you. We're certainly receptive to that, and I look forward to bringing closure to this. And I also congratulate you on simultaneously bringing forward what looks like perhaps will be a cure to your ordinances that now it has recognized deficiencies that are going to be addressed. I think that's a healthy thing. So thank you. I look forward to any input you may have between now and the 14th of next month for the decision, and appreciate your attention to this. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Henderson? Okay, the Planning and Zoning Board have any questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Henderson. Okay, this item will go to the Planning and Zoning Board at their meeting on September 24th, and we'll be back to the Board of Commissioners for potential decision on October 14th.
Wait a minute. Public, you don't have the public.
Oh, okay. So, is there anyone who would like to speak in support or opposition to this zoning? Anyone who would like to speak in support or opposition? Okay. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is zoning application 2019-700. Stronghaven. This is to change the zoning from I-1 to I-1CD on that certain property designated as 433 East John Street, and further identified as tax parcel 215-014-06. Mr. Camp.
All right, 433 East John Street, of course, located here at the corner of Charles Buckley and East John Street, just east of the U.S. Post Office here in downtown. Again, this is a property that we are working with the applicants on a zoning change. The proposal would be a substitute proposal in lieu of, again, the town zoning motion to make a zoning change to R12 here. This request would be to change the zoning from I1 to I1CD. So the applicant is requesting to place conditions on the property but keep the zoning I1. Staff, again, has generated the site plan just to depict the location of the building and the general footprint of it. As I discussed in the last zoning petition, we have a list of allowed uses that are being proposed that is attached to the staff report here. It is quite lengthy, but I have attached it if you all have any questions. Parallel to this rezoning application, the applicant has also filed a site plan with the town that involves the relocation of the truck docks along John Street to some currently unused docks along Charles Street. That is currently in process, sort of independent of the zoning. An engineering firm has been hired to evaluate that proposal, and the applicant may have more information regarding that when they speak here in just a moment. And then just another bullet point that you've probably already seen in the staff report. Several months ago, Planning Board did review a potential rezoning of this property to the R12 district, which would be in conformance with the area zoning. Even though Planning Board did recommend approval of that, they also said that they thought that the I1CD designation would be more appropriate for the site given the use in the building that is currently present there. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Any questions for Mr. Camp? Mr. Miller?
Thank you. So Jay, currently the trucks back in on John Street into here, correct?
Correct.
And the goal would be to have them enter this direction in the future, so there'd be less traffic jams as well?
Right, so the area they're evaluating is looking at some additional pavement here and looking at if trucks can use that area for access to the site.
Okay. And then under uses, I was confused in that under general commercial uses, I think it might be in the memo further down, it strikes through alcohol and alcoholic beverage, wine and beer production and sales, subject to state statute 155 dot so on and so forth. Then later it allows a brewery, a brew pub, a microbrewery. So I'm wondering why those three are allowed when it strikes it earlier. Was that an oversight, or are they different?
Right, I've got to go back and look, but I believe there's a distinction on the size of the facility, like how many barrels are produced. So
okay.
Like a local craft brewery as opposed to a Budweiser production facility.
Okay. So it's a much smaller scale then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I do want to note that the relocation of the trucks is not currently a zoning condition here. It is something they're evaluating, but that is not a condition as we currently stand.
It's a preferred outcome.
Right.
Any other questions for Mr. Camp? Jay, let me ask you, did you go through the uses with the petitioner that they've struck some of those uses out, but there's still a number in here that don't really make a lot of sense for that location? Primarily, we're looking at this because it's in the middle of a residential area.
Correct.
And we are having issues with the truck traffic. So I'm a little bit surprised that that's not part of the zoning petition. But did you go through each one of these with them? If not, then perhaps you and I can sit down and strike. I mean, there's probably 25, too many to go through tonight, but there are a number of these that really do not take us in a direction of converting that to a use that's consistent with the neighborhood in the future.
Yeah, I'm happy to sit down with you if you want to
Okay.
look at paring this back further,
All right,
and we can communicate that with the applicant.
okay, thank you. Mr. Higgin?
Yeah, just one final question. Can we get a commitment to move the docks and not just that they're looking at it?
I'd have to defer to the applicant on that question.
Because that would be a key consideration, because it's very disruptive the way it currently is.
Mr. Higgin, we'll hold that question. I'll call you on you when the applicant's up. Any other questions? Ms. Dement?
Just a comment, I would like to be included, maybe Jay, in that conversation, because I have some questions about some of the uses that were not struck through.
Okay. All right, any questions from the Planning and Zoning Board? Okay.
All right.
All right, is the petitioner available?
Yes. Slides. Perfect. All right. Appreciate it.
Mayor Bailey, Commissioners, Planning Board. My name is Aaron Frank. I'm a land planner with Womble Bond Dickinson. I'm here representing Strong Haven, Inc. Appreciate your time having us on the agenda this evening. We also want to thank Jay for his coordination and his assistance with our application. I know you have a busy agenda, so I'll try to keep it brief, but I have a brief presentation for you just with some background about the property and the project. So as you know, the property itself is highlighted in green on this slide. It's at the intersection of East John Street, Charles Buckley Way, and East Charles, and current zoning is light industrial. The property itself was constructed in 1960, and that is before much of the surrounding area in Matthews. As indicated on this aerial photograph, things did look a little bit differently in 1961, and the property has operated for light industrial purposes since then. So one interesting point that I found was that the population was 609 residents at that time. Since then has blossomed into over 32,000. So the area has changed quite a bit in terms of the surrounding context. As you can see on the left-hand image, there's both new residential as well as new non-residential development since the development of this property. So Strong Haven creates and manufactures packaging, boxes, displays, many items that I and many of you, I'm sure, use on a day-to-day basis. Strong Haven has two properties in town. The property that we're discussing this evening at the John Street intersection shown in this photograph, as well as at the corner of Monroe and Charles. And the properties work in tandem. An impact to one of them will disrupt the other. They really are reciprocal and integral to each other. Between the two, Strong Haven has an $8.8 million payroll and contributes $38,000 in taxes annually to the town. So the request this evening is to rezone the property from light industrial to light industrial conditional. And this follows the recommendation of the Planning Board, which would allow us to address some of the concerns that we heard while still reserving our rights to be able to continue to operate on the property, which is of paramount importance. The conditional zoning process that we're in right now, it allows for some self-imposed restrictions of land uses. And that was the attachment and the proposed condition that we have submitted. We will continue to use the property for its business, the same business that operates there now in the future. But we want to be a cooperative corporate citizen, as we have been, and we feel that we have been targeted and blamed for some changing conditions in the surrounding area that are largely a product of general growth. But we want to be able to be here at the table to address the concerns that we can and hopefully respond in a positive way. So this rezoning application, with zoning applications, our staff will be looking for consistency with the comprehensive plan. We do see several areas where we do see consistency, and we believe it is. The East John Street Gateway, which is the small area plan that governs this area, states that between the I-485 interchange area and downtown, Adjacent land should remain in its current, mostly residential use, supporting and maintaining the existing land use. The industrial land use plan states the town acknowledges and supports a shift toward growth of light industrial uses in its jurisdiction. Furthermore, to encourage the growth of light industrial uses for which we are zoned and operate as. Economic development, something that we certainly feel that we are a part of in town, is to maintain a balanced tax base by retaining a variety of industries. So along with the zoning consistency with comprehensive plan, we do have the same requirements that we have been going through. We, of course, applied for the rezoning on May 28th and notified adjacent residents. We have not received any responses to our notification. We notified our next door neighbor, the Church of God. We want to include them in our dialogue. And the church has welcomed our improvements, and we look forward to continuing to discuss this with them. We held a community meeting on August 22nd, and we did not have any attendees. So tonight, we request your support, and that support be communicated to the planning board. We are scheduled to be before the planning board on September 24th, and I appreciate your time once again.
Any questions for the applicant, Mr. Urban?
I'd like to thank you for your participation. I think you're going to be asked specifically about the loading dock.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're going to say, hey, we want to relocate it, and I would support that. I'm a little saddened about this industrial property amongst all this residential, and you didn't get the community reach out that I thought you would have. So that's just a general note. We talked about some strike-throughs. I think they're talking about having a meeting, but I'll come right off the top and tell you what items that I would like to see strike through. One is a funeral home, because what I'm looking for are active uses for downtown and not those once-in-a-while uses, although, never mind. So to me, it's, you get my drift. There you go. Okay. Strike heliport. I don't leave my helicopter at this location, so you take that one out. Again, strike mini storage facility, because again, I think that's detrimental to the downtown area and having active use. And then there are a lot of little miscellaneous ones. This whole idea of vending machines located outside or under overhangs, completely unsightly. So those are my sort of highlighted bullet points, and I'm sure the guru of uses, the mayor, Paul Bailey, will follow back up with you at some other date.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes, are you amenable to making a part of this rezoning include a mandate to move the loading docks? I know it's not your fault that the town grew a lot, but turning a truck around in the middle of John Street multiple times a day is a terrible traffic jam, creates a traffic jam for the town, and it's very inconvenient for a resident. So will you commit to moving the loading docks?
Mayor Pro Tem Higdon, appreciate the comment, and that's something that we are exploring. So as Mr. Camp did mention, we have submitted a plan to revise the loading docks. That plan is currently under review. It's something that we felt we could do separately, as loading docks can be modified administratively. It doesn't require the zoning change to revise more of an engineering concern. So that's something that we will consider, and what we first need to know is what sort of concerns we have from staff. Does it make sense? Does it work from an engineering perspective? We need to make sure that we can actually build it the way that we propose it.
So from your internal staff?
From town staff. We need to make sure that this is constructible before we can commit to it.
Mr. Query?
Yes. I would just give you my opinion on this, that if you can't remove those docks from that road, I think we need to do something otherwise to get them off of there and get the zoning changed. So I think you need to take a real hard look at that before you come back. That I couldn't accept in any way, shape, or form, leaving it there. So
okay.
Just the fact that you're thinking about it doesn't answer any of my questions. Thank you.
Ms. DeMint?
Just like to add an additional comment to support that. And I was a little disappointed at the way that that was approached in the presentation, that you can't help that the town grew, and you can't, but as a good corporate citizen, you have to change with that. And so it is not acceptable for the traffic to be backed up like that. So I would like for those docks to be considered to move, because that is not acceptable to have the trucks turning around in the middle of that major street.
I appreciate the clear comment on that. We'll continue to work with staff and pursue this.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you. As long as we have someone as smart as you in here, I'd like to point out that your other location of Strong Haven on Monroe Road does essentially the same thing with trucks backing in and out. I spent 15 years at Family Dollar in their distribution center. I'm familiar with loading docks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it may not be relevant to tonight's public hearing or anything like that, but both properties back up major traffic. I think it should be reviewed at any kind of internal turnaround or something if possible. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Urban.
Since I've learned some things from the discussion, and I'd be remiss in not mentioning this, that should the loading dock get relocated, I think there's some great opportunities for landscaping, tree plantings. A coat of one color of paint would do wonders to cover up a lot of the rust. And any other aesthetic sort of improvements that could be done and sort of as a light lift, I think would be greatly appreciated.
And as far as the uses are concerned, Mr. Urban mentioned some of those, but I think my cut's going to go a lot deeper than that. I'll commit to working with Mr. Camp by Wednesday afternoon, and we can, and Ms. DeMint, and we can get those to you. The other thing is that while I appreciate your evaluation of our land use plan and what it's supposed to do, I will say that maybe you need to go back and look at it again, because I think you missed the flavor of what our intent is.
Okay.
So, any other questions from the board? Any questions from the Planning and Zoning Board? Okay, thank you.
Appreciate the feedback.
Is there anyone present who would like to speak in support or opposition to this zoning application? Anyone to speak in support or opposition? Okay. Seeing none, this item will go to the Planning and Zoning Board for their September 24th meeting, and we'll be able to come back to the Board of Commissioners on October 14th. Okay, the next item on the agenda in our public hearing is zoning application 2019-701, Covenant Day School. This is to change the zoning from R20 to B1CD, from R20 and B1CD to RICD on those certain parcels designated as 515 Matthews Township Parkway and 10812 Monroe Road, and being further identified as tax parcels 213-012-01 and 17. Mary Jo Golniz will address this for us, but I would like to say something first. I do live in the neighborhood that is behind this ball field. We have checked the maps and concluded that I am well outside the legal distance from this property. I do not abut that property, and therefore I can participate in this public hearing and decision on this particular application. Mary Jo?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. As you stated, these are two properties that are being requested to be rezoned. The zoning map here shows the one parcel here along Matthews Township Parkway, and this parcel over here along Monroe Road. The applicant proposes addition of several buildings, press box, and additional seating. This is the project area, its current conditions. You can see the softball field, baseball field, football, and then over here is the parking off Monroe Road. The current zoning does not allow additional seating capacity for Covenant Day, and they wish to add permanent seats. So that is the reason and the necessity to rezone from R20 and B1CD to RICD. And I will say this is in error. The property over on Monroe Road was rezoned at one time to B1CD. So this property here has never been rezoned since the first R20 rezoning when it was incorporated in the town. Here is the site plan that they're proposing. Again, there's no changes to the softball field and the baseball field. They are looking to add a building here, a facility building here for that stadium seating, and then walking around here, some walking, additional parking here, which will all be paved. They're going to add a press box and stadium seating here, concession stand here. There is existing building right here that will stay. There's also some other field maintenance building here for all their equipment, which is currently housed over here in a small building that has been broken into several times. And then another building over here for storage, additional seating here. They will add a proposed track around here. This is all going to be done in phases. So it's not all going to be done at once. It will all be done in phases. These are the current buildings, dugouts that are out in the field, and their proposed conditions state that they will have similar facilities. All the buildings will be made similar with a 20% facade of brick, natural stone, or other equivalents. They are looking to add additional parking and paving of all the spaces, 4 new structures, 3 sets of bleachers. Lighting shall meet the Unified Development Ordinance. They will not increase the height of any of the lighting fixtures. They will stay the same as what's out there. All landscaping and buffer required, and the parking areas will be met. Screening on both sides of Monroe Road, and an easement for construction of a maintenance an easement of construction and maintenance of a 10-foot multi-use path through the facility or along the edge of the facility is being requested from the staff. And they also are reducing, there's a driveway over here. Let me see if I can show it. There's 2 driveways over here, and the furthest one, the closest to point blank range, is going to go away. So they will only have 1 entrance on the Monroe Road side for parking. They will have a gate over here, which already exists. So the land use plan talks about recreational land use, buffering for the neighbors. It also is a use that would eliminate the installation of the multi-use path would help eliminate some of the vehicular traffic. Staff has met several times with the applicant. So the land use plan currently shows a dotted line for a trail here, and that is what the applicant put on the site plan. Since proximity is being constructed, they will be putting a multi-use path through the back here with the cemetery being on the back side, but there will be a multi-use path that'll come through here. So staff suggests that we keep going with the path here. There is a stub street here that could connect, and folks could walk through the neighborhood sidewalks and paved areas and come out at Vine Arden here, and then have the multi-use path between the fence and the buffer that is well developed at this point, and have the path through here and up around through here to the future pedestrian crossing on 51 when DOT gets ready to widen the road. That is the proximate location of the crossing signal for this area. That was part of the request from Covenant Day to get the students across the street once the road is widening, so that is why this is the preferred route. Coming here, there is nothing here to go for the students or anybody to come across. Plus NCDOT's widening would be there. Staff went out with one of the architects and visited the site, and these are some of the pictures. So this area is, once you're inside past the parking, this is the paved area, and the neighborhood is over here on the back side of this. And you can see this buffer is very thick. And then this area is looking down. The fence is on the back side over here, and we were walking over here on the pavement. We were over here on the pavement. We were looking down in there. So there's a down low spot in there that, that could be used for a trail. It's, just some underbrush that could be cleared, and it would be a spot that would not impede with any of the traffic, any buses or anything in here on the property. The site that was originally drawn by the engineers this is the perimeter fencing, and then the undisturbed buffer. This is supposed to be undisturbed buffer on the Monroe Road side. So this is inside the property. We were looking down to the football field, and this is all the undisturbed buffer, and the plan shows the 10-foot multi-use path through this buffer. So a lot of mature trees and clearing would have to be done. To put it on this side, inside of the property, which would not be ideal for the safety of the students. And also there's a slope going down to the fence, and then it slopes up this way when you get further down towards Matthews Township Parkway. Additional comments, again, staff, we're still working on the pathway, the multi-use path with them. The fire department would like to see a click and entry system for the new gates. Maybe, that they would like to see that type of assistance, or a knock box. Currently, there is none out there. And that's all I have. I will say there was no residents attended the public comment meeting, the community meeting that they held, but the church did have a meeting with the neighbors well before that, and they did have neighbors attend.
Any questions for Mary Jo? Mr. Urban?
Mary Jo, in staff's opinion, is there a need for more buffering or landscaping on the perimeter?
I think no, they don't need additional. I think it's sufficient where it is right now along the neighborhood.
Okay.
It's very thick.
Okay. The light fixtures, I remember the original zoning conditions way back yonder. Did we have the full cutoff requirements back then, or would they have to comply with the new ordinance, which requires the full cutoff lighting? How do we?
Okay.
Yeah, they were upgraded at that time.
So we're going to have the full cutoff lighting?
Yes.
We get the .1 at the property line cutoff type?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Any additions will have to be reviewed.
To meet that? Okay, that'd be fine. You answered my question about the street access to Monroe cutting off, but what isn't clear to me is what happened to the discussion with the road connectivity that runs behind Point Blank and Covenant PedMed and so on and so forth?
Well, we looked at that. Jay and I looked at that quite a bit. I guess that's not the one I want. So they're required to put in the tree buffer along the parking over there. So either we have the buffer or we have the street connection. They would, the other thing is, if somebody went to rezone this, they would have to You know, it would, if it was going to commercial, the connection would be fine. But the PED does not fit here. There is stormwater here. We just weren't comfortable with requiring the additional connection here. The stub street is going to be there. The stub connection is going to be there. They would lose additional parking by putting that, removing this and having, they would lose a lot of parking, plus there would be a lot of, instead of having just one access after games with all the traffic out here, then you're putting two accesses. You're having it at Point Blank and at their parking space, because people would park over there and have that extra access up.
Get that, but wasn't that really the sort of the intent of creating that secondary means?
Yeah, we did discuss that, and we've,
I mean, I think personally, I mean, I'll ask the petitioner, but I think I'd like to circle back and look at that, because
Okay.
it's sort of, here we made an effort at Point Blank Range, that infrastructure's in there, the pediatric medical building is putting in its fair share, and what do I tell them when they say, well, you didn't make them connect to me, I put all this money into this, it's not going anywheres, what's gonna happen? I think we need to have, you know, whether it's a discussion for something put on the plan that should something change, you've got to incorporate it, but, you know, this has been one of those long-term made-out
Right.
plans, and it's sort of like, well, don't worry about it, then it won't happen, and then we're going to regret it, because I guess the other part is, should, let's say, option B for this multi-use path come to fruition, now there's some continuity between vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic and having an urban path along there from that aspect. So I think we're losing something in the
Okay.
long-term plan from that aspect of it. Let me
Okay.
just check my notes real quickly.
we'll check into that again and discuss that further.
That's all the comments I have at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Query?
Yes, I reckon a bunch of things, but first, Mary Jo, this, I don't know if this thing works or not, but was it anyhow? This is the parking area they're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, wasn't the previous zoning that cannot be connected to the major thing to keep that from being a exit for cars coming out on Old Monroe Road? I remember something about that we didn't allow. We made the fence stay up. And that the other thing that's a concern to me is that we figured that would be kids coming out of there, coming from the ballpark, and that would be a hazard. And we didn't want that at that time, and this goes back a ways. But the other thing is the buffer around that neighborhood. That was a major concern back at the time when they built this. And if we could have changed something at that time, we would have. And for them to even thinking about cutting any of that stuff out of there to make a path on, right in that area behind that neighborhood would not be acceptable to me. It's not thick enough now as to what we would have back at the time when they built this. We didn't have a control over it. This is the time when we can make it kind of stick that that's what we want, because the neighbors have complained to me continually about the noise. And that's just some things I think I'd like for y'all to take a look at and look back on the original zoning on that parking lot.
And that was denied, that connection issue. That
Yeah.
was the zoning that was denied.
Yes.
So
they
that is
cannot
not,
cut-
that is
But
not.
it looks like they're trying to connect it now.
Yes.
Mr. Query, I think what the issue was
Right there.
connecting this to
To
this
that.
road
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
here.
No, they're not going to do
Go,
that.
go back to the one where you're showing their new plan.
The site plan?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a fence that's right here that's going to
Okay.
stay here. So there's no vehicular access back through here.
Okay.
Okay,
Did we not deny parking there also?
excuse me?
Did we not deny parking in that
Here?
piece right? Yes.
They're already using it for parking.
I didn't say they weren't using it. I'm just saying, didn't we deny parking?
They need that to meet the ordinance for parking.
I'm
Okay.
thinking at the time, they did not own that property.
We denied it. I don't know what all went
Okay.
on.
Too many years ago.
Yeah.
Mr. Melton?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll wait till. No, I wanted to wait till Mary Jo.
I know.
finished. I'm just,
I'm sorry.
no, it's all right. Mary Jo, is there any time limit or mention of time as to the phasing of this project? Have they said it's a 5-year phasing, a 10-year, or 20-year phasing plan?
No, sir. The comment that staff received was that the first step is the rezoning.
Okay, okay. And a second question, Commissioner Urban touched on it, and maybe the mayor did as well, but item 5 in the conditions, lighting shall meet the Unified Development Ordinance requirements. Does that bring in the lighting that is existing into what they're being asked for, and it has to meet it as a whole? Or are we saying the new parking lot, the new football field, and the new parking lot, are we approving those separately, or this project as a whole? I'm wondering if we approve them in a vacuum, once this thing is built out, we're going to see that it's far exceeds our requirements.
Okay, so so we don't have lighting plans at this moment.
Okay.
So that's why they get approved later on, because they have to do all the foot candles and give us the height of the lights and all the technical that we review to make sure there's no spill out.
Okay.
The ordinance requires a certain height maximum for those lights. It also requires cutoff times when it's this type of use for a stadium-type facility. Okay. The parking generally meets the ordinance requirements just the way they have it. They put in, they showed trees, which I glanced at it, and it looks like it meets that section of the ordinance. Now, again, we did discuss the location of some of the poles and the parking, but that, again, is also all one part of the site plan review when they get to develop it.
Can we ask for the photometric plans to be a part of the zoning, or is it stated that thou shalt come later?
That's usually a staff review and comes later.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Higdon.
Yes, Mary Jo, can you go to the slide that shows the 2 proposed routes, Route A and Route B?
Certainly.
I just want to get some clarification. In this area down here, which side of the buffer is staff proposing that we build it on? Is it immediately up against the homes?
No.
So
It's between, this is the buffer up at the top inside the facility.
Right.
And then there's a fence on the other side, and it's between the fence and this buffer. And
So what confused me was this picture here, you're saying down in there's
Yes.
a low area.
Yes.
Well, how close is that to the homes?
20 feet or so.
So there's still additional,
Yes, yes.
okay.
This is at the 50-foot from the homes. And so that's just down inside there.
Well, I think it was Commissioner Query's comment, and I recall as well, when we did the initial rezoning, there were some really fantastic, beautiful legacy 150, 200-year-old trees that were cut down on the site.
Mhm.
And I would very much like to see us maintain as many trees as possible and maintain some sort of privacy for the landowners that
Agreed.
that are right up against it.
Over here too, all this is buffered along this edge too, and that would have to be cleared.
That's unacceptable to me, but.
So that's why we did walk the site to see that. So here's the 20-foot mark, and this is the 50 where all those trees are, and this is the fence right along here. So it'd be right in between here.
Okay, thank you. That's what I wasn't real clear.
Okay.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Warner Park is owned by Covenant Day School, correct?
Correct.
Help me understand why would or why should the town install or pay for a greenway or a multi-use path inside of Warner Park?
We've done it along other properties too, private properties.
So, Mr. Miller, Commissioner Miller, I think the question is, we think greenways are very, very important. We do prefer the development community pay for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know as part of this discussions if we get there, but the town's built out in many areas and it's very hard to find spots to get greenways in. This has the potential of going in. Now, who pays for it? That's a good question.
Well, we've talked about, I think it's the Monroe side greenway for up to 10 years or more. We've got the apartment complex building it, as you stated, near the graveyard area. I've heard Charlie say a number of times that you can't use public funds to improve private property.
Well, yes, and we are not saying that now either. We're not saying the town's going to build this greenway.
Well, it says easement for construction and maintenance of a 10-foot multi-use path is shown on the site plan with a note that it will be installed by the town.
It would become public.
That was
So
their
what we
note.
would do is deed it, yeah, you could deed it over to the town, deed the property over to the town, and then the town could do it.
Well, I just question if it's a park, why the park owner of the park wouldn't build it themselves.
That's a great question.
Thank you.
Mr. Query?
Yes. Mary Jo, can you go back, I'm going to hit you on the parking one more time to talk about it. Can you go back to the one and blow up the area down there beside Monroe Road?
The site plan?
Yes,
Sure.
right there. This area right here,
Yes.
especially right in there.
Sorry, I missed that.
Uh-oh, me too.
Siri will blow up that plan for you.
Is that Mary Jo or your phone?
It is. She's going to answer it for me. Mary Jo, what my concern and what I've seen is this is shows a gate that opens and closes, and this is a path around there that we denied before, that they could not open that gate. It had to stay in. They couldn't use that for parking. For the main reason is we did not want their high school kids pulling out on Monroe Road and getting killed.
Okay. That could be noted that that cannot be vehicular access. They have a gate there currently that they use with the building that's on Monroe Road. Right in here, there's that building, that's their equipment shed, one of their equipment sheds. So that's why they have that there to access for their lawnmowers, their four-wheelers, whatever. That could be made as a note with agreement from them that that does not be used as an entrance into the park for vehicles
Okay,
access.
and just for information, if there's anything done to park kids in here, I would not support it.
Okay, this is
It's parking for their facility.
correct. That
And that's, I'm just letting you know that that's, and I will let them know that too, so.
Okay.
It's a danger for the kids.
Correct, I understand. What we, as planning staff, we can't say who parks there.
Mr. Urban?
Get clarification on that. Based on Commissioner Query's statement, if they were to lose 137 spaces, it would not be in compliance with the zoning ordinance.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions for Mary Jo? Any questions from the Planning and Zoning Board?
Come on.
Okay. No, we'll get to that in just a moment.
Gets required.
Okay. All right. Okay, so is a petitioner here?
Oh, yes, they are.
Okay.
Good evening. Mr. Mayor, board members, my name is Colin Brown. I'm a partner with the law firm of Alexander Ricks, here tonight on behalf of Covenant Day School. Joining me also tonight is the head of school. We have the athletics director, as well as the project architect. So I will try to give you, Mary Jo did a fine job with an overview, a couple of things I want to hone in on, and then our team is here to answer questions. What you're seeing in the slides we used at our several community meetings, but I think Mary Jo's got everyone oriented to the site. This is it with an aerial. These are all the considerations we talked through with the neighbors of everything we were evaluating. Existing zoning on the site is R20. That is primarily a single-family residential district. You may ask, and a lot of folks, as we had these meetings, are, well, why do you need a rezoning now? Warner Park is there. It's been there for years. I'll talk to you about that. This is the adopted land use plan. There's been a lot of conversation tonight about the location of the Greenway Trail. What I want y'all to know is that is not something that the Covenant Day team has come up with. When we started looking at this, we looked at your adopted plans, and there was a greenway trail shown here, and then there was so this is the Warner Park site. There was a potential greenway trail marked here, and then there's a future street connection shown in that area. So having seen those on the plan, we reflected that in our rezoning plan. We presumed that would be an ask of the town. So it is not necessarily a desire of Covenant to say we have to have the greenway and this is where we are putting it. This is simply we were reflecting in our rezoning plan what we saw in your adopted plans. As you know, there's also a significant NCDOT project ongoing at this intersection that will affect access. Some of those changes, we've talked about it, I'll show you the vehicular connection. There's importance to that, and some of that's exacerbated by the NCDOT improvements. So here we are. This is the Covenant Day School facilities. They're currently zoned R20. A few years ago, we received an email as the team was evaluating from Jay, and this is just a good summary of why we're here. Covenant came in to make some changes to the field, and Jay pointed out that prior to the UDO rewrite, athletic fields were allowed in the R20 zoning district, so they were allowed at that time. When the UDO was rewritten, athletic fields were removed as a permitted use in the R20 district. So there's R20, ball fields no longer allowed. So here we are, we created a non-conforming situation. So Covenant is here, they have a major investment in Warner Park. It is a major component of their entire school plan. And so one of our goals is really just to bring the zoning up into conformity. And so that's why we don't necessarily have a clear timeline on the phasing. We know there's growth coming. We've got some plans. I'll walk you through that. But I did want you to know how we got there. So prior to the UDO rewrite, this was a permitted use. After the UDO rewrite, it is not. And we are trying to bring it up so that we have a zoning that is compliant with what we're doing on the site. Here's a look at the existing conditions. This is our proposed zoning plan. Mary Jo's walked through it. This is a colored up version. And one of the things I think you'll notice is there are not many significant changes to the property itself. If I put these side by side, this is an aerial view today. This is the master plan. So this is something we've shown in our neighborhood meetings, and I'll point out we did a few unofficial meetings, so there's some neighbors that came to those. They voiced concerns. By the time we did our official meeting, no one came, but that's not to say that people were not interested, involved, and we did have some opposition expressed. But what we want to be clear on is then when you put side to side of what is there now and what is proposed, there are no significant changes that would involve land clearing. I understand from the history of this project that has been a real sensitivity, tree removal. So if you look here, the improvements that would happen on the site are in areas that are already developed. This plan does not call for significant changes around the perimeter of the site. Community priorities, we talked through a lot of those. The only outstanding issue that staff has on their staff analysis is what's been discussed a little bit tonight. This is the multi-use path. So as I mentioned, the only reason we showed the greenway initially on our plan was the land use plan called for it. We showed it on one side of the site at this location, coming in here because that's what we'd seen on the plans. When we came through the process, the town said, you know what, we really would like to have a greenway. We think that's important. Would you consider putting it in this area of the site? We need to have more robust conversations about that. Covenant needs to make sure that works for them. We need to have conversation with you all. And I should say that when we had our community meetings, what we showed was the potential greenway in this location. Some of the neighbors that attended did not attend meetings when we said, well, the town has asked for a greenway in this location, so that might affect their opinions too. But really just want to underscore for you, we're trying to follow the town's lead on that. That is not a request from Covenant. If the determination is we should not have a greenway, I think that's fine with us. If the determination is that we need a greenway, I think there's got to be a good discussion with your design team to make sure that works. That's something the neighbors and the council is comfortable with. And then also, if we're going to do that, how that's financed in a way that it also protects Covenant. They're operating a school here. They have children on that campus. And so utmost importance to the school is that those folks are safe. So that's the number one. The other item we talked about tonight, this is, Mr. Query is correct. What we're showing is a limited access connection between 51 and Monroe Road. So there's currently a road that runs in this location. It does come out to this property here. This is not something that would be a daily used thing. We're not having students park here and drive through. But on occasions where there is a football game or a sporting event, we do anticipate that opposing teams would bring buses to the site. And with the new limited access options that are occurring here, we do think it's important to have a vehicular connection option. It would be gated in this location so that people are not driving through there, but at some times, a vehicular connection between the 2 points would really improve traffic movement on the site. So I think those are the two items we've talked about most tonight. Like I said, we have our team of experts here. We have the head of school, we have the director of athletics, and we have our project architect. So I won't belabor my presentation, but happy to answer any questions you have.
I have a few questions. Where do you play baseball? Right here?
And I'm going to ask one of the school representatives to come up that are more familiar with the day-to-day operations of the facility.
That's fine.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's where we play baseball.
Okay. I will tell you, and you'll probably hear this from the other people that are here. When baseball games are played here, we listen to amplified music. We know who's batting, when they're batting, what they did when they batted, and how many outs there are and everything else, sitting on our back porches trying to enjoy Friday evening. So I'm sure that you'll hear that from these folks. So there's some amplification issues on this property that need to be addressed along with down here if this were to go through. The second area is up here, the softball field. This is extremely close to the back neighbors right here. And I'm not trying to be ugly with this, but I know the kids get out there and they get excited and they're having fun and the parents are getting excited. But the noise out here is just ridiculous. I mean, it really is. And I mean, when we talk about a church who's putting on programs, church school putting on programs, I think there's a balance between the people who live here and the church. And you know, we're all claiming to be Christians, so we need to be able to work together on this. But I think that there's some noise issues back here, amplification issues right here. There will be amplification issues right here. Those need to be all addressed specifically in the petition. I will say that the lights do cut off right at the property line. Fascinating how that happens. But, you know, they're fine. They're shining into the field and not really bleeding over into the neighborhood. I think that's all the comments I have at this point. I'll probably think of a few more. Mr. Urban?
Colin, good evening. Let's make a deal on Greenway. The answer is yes. Me, one of six, would like to see a Greenway. The AB profile, the AB route is, I guess, up for debate. If I had my druthers, knowing what Mayor Bailey talked about, and Commissioner Query and I have walked this lot several times with the buffers, I would like to see a very unique solution to be in the fact that, granted, it's a buffer there, but you can weave around trees, you can do different things, you can thin out spots and make resting areas. But I think from the standpoint of creating a hybrid greenway there, you have the potential of knitting the commercial on one side and you on the other side with a zipper running up and down in there. And so getting one heck of a great pedestrian use through there that removes it from the back of the homes where the mayor and others live, but could be actually a avenue for future development along there where maybe some commercial businesses actually turn away from Monroe and face your park. So I think there's huge design opportunities with what I'll call the zipper, for the lack of a better word, at this stage in the game. I just think it's going to take a deeper dive to look at that. The other aspect...
Commissioner Urban, when you say that, you're saying the zipper is...
Is B.
Is this location?
Yes,
Okay.
coming up with a way of knitting both the commercial aspect and the Covenant Church aspect of it. And, you know, there may be some safety or privacy concerns, may have to deal with a fence or something like that, but I could see it as a much grander promenade in a lot of respects that acts as a great pedestrian way, linking both pedestrians from the church and pedestrians from those commercial projects, because we don't know what they're going to be like in 10, 15 years down the road. It may be a type of housing type projects or something like that, or mixed use, which would need levels of connectivity that we don't otherwise have. That being said, I think we have to have a deeper dive into the parking lot and the access behind the Covenant Pediatric Medical Building in Point Blank Range. I'd like to see that discussion a little bit further. If it's something where you put the parking spaces in there, but you plan for the infrastructure, for the connectivity, or you put the stub in there and you park in the stub in, but I really think this plan will lose its credibility if we allow you to cut it off completely. You know, it seems meritless to do Route B and not have the ability of someone maybe park and get on there and walk or something like that. So my biggest priority, I think the mayor's points are absolutely well taken. I've been there, I've gotten emails about the pinging of the bats, I've gotten emails about the coarse language coming out of church property, but I'm going to talk about aesthetic issues and what this could be as a great community effort along that route. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Query.
Yeah. And you're going to hear the same thing I said a while ago. This was years ago when we considered the safety of y'all's their children. And now you're coming back, and you can say you're just going to open those gates at some time. How do we know that? There's nothing, no guarantees there. And actually, when the games come about, is when all the traffic's going to want to get out of there, and you're coming out on Old Monroe Road, a busy highway. And that's not an acceptable thing for me from the standpoint. And anything that cuts down any of the buffer behind those houses, I would not accept. So whether it's a path or whether you're making a walkway for y'all or a driveway, I couldn't accept any of that. So I just want to make you aware that you're going down a hard road as far as I'm concerned, because I was here when this was done originally, and there was a lot of conflict because it was stuck in there all of a sudden, and the neighbors didn't know it, and we weren't aware of it, and we caught the heat for that one. And so there needs to be some things done to improve all of that before I could accept any of it. Thank you.
Ms. Dement?
Yes, I want to echo as well what Commissioner Urban was talking about with the Plan B and the future opportunities that are there for that. And I think that's something we have to recognize. So I would certainly be in favor of the multi-use path. Who pays for it? I'd like for us to maybe have that conversation too at some point, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, many other developers that have come before us for rezoning, they have paid for it. Axe, Eden Hall, the apartments that are just right up the way. But my question of that, did they deed the property over to the town after paying for that?
It was dedicated on a plat.
I realize it's a church, but I think the same, you're still a corporate citizen like those other organizations are too. So I think we would need to treat Christ Covenant the same, or Covenant Day School the same as we have treated Axe, we've treated David Weekly Homes, we've treated the others. So I think there needs to be the same there and not something different. My second question is for Commissioner Query's concern about the parking. I personally think that it would benefit to have 2 entrances and 2 exits to that large, because it's what, 26 acres or something like that. Is there room at the Monroe Road? This is where there's not 1 ounce of me that's an engineer. So is there room for a right-in, right-out only? Because then you can only enter off of Monroe Road. You can only exit right off of Monroe Road, because your main concern, I think, Commissioner Query, would be people trying to turn left on Monroe. Is that correct?
Actually, at the time, it was both directions, and it was children coming in and out.
We've got children coming in and out on some pretty busy streets in Charlotte at high schools and things like that, is there room for a ride-in, ride-out, and would that be acceptable?
We'll look
Commissioner
at,
Query?
Commissioner Dement, one of the issues is there's significant NCDO improvements proposed. I think this certainly becomes right-in, right-out only. We'll have to look at that.
I believe
I
you're
think we're
talking
full
about
access
a
up there now.
51 there, right?
That's right, so 51
yeah,
is
but
up there.
on Monroe Road, could there be a ride-in, ride-out?
We can have our engineering team look at that.
Mr. Higgin.
I just want to make a comment. I was on the Appearance and Tree Board when this park was developed, and as I said earlier, a lot of really magnificent trees were cut down. There was a couple American chestnut trees on the property that are very rare that were taken down. I understand you can't play football if there's an oak tree in the middle of the field, but it was, having a real passion for trees, it was kind of devastating. So I'll just make a comment, whether we do choose Route A or Route B or whatever, I want there to be a great sensitivity to the trees, because there's a lot that have already been taken off this property, and I'd hate to see many more trees sacrificed. So there's not a lot left for the benefit of the neighbors and the whole town. I'd like to see as many trees saved as possible, whatever plan is needed. I do think we need some sort of pedestrian walkway through there for connectivity. Where it goes is to be decided, but to not have one would be a real shame. I think we do need one.
The town managers reached out to our team, last week and said we need to have a conversation about the location, and so we'll continue doing that.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the Planning and Zoning Board?
I would only think that I'm pretty much involved on exit coming out of Monroe. But most schools, when they have activity, they hire a police officer that direct traffic in and out. So that would, I think, Chris, would take care of some of your concerns about teenagers coming out after a game. But then if you that after you come out after the game, there will be a police officer, and that's the responsibility of the school or the activity to how often the police officer to help with that. If there was another exit, and I concur that I think it should be a 2 exit, right in and right out.
Any other questions? Mike?
First, I want to recognize that my children all went to Covenant Day. Okay. One question, who parks in that parking lot today? Up top on Monroe Road.
It's Janet Murley.
You're talking about this one right here, Mike?
Up there?
Yes.
Right now, for example, we had a football game Friday night. It was parents, it was visitors, it was students. We also have police. We had a Matthews police officer there to direct traffic in and out, and we have one down off of 51. So we're already using it for parking.
And I do agree. I mean, safety is always a concern, but making sure that that's improved to whatever it comes out with from an engineering study. But I do think that, having access to both sides is important. But safety, I would agree. I think safety is always a concern. But if we're already using it, you should look at it like that.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from the Planning and Zoning Board? Okay, we have some additional questions from up here, so we'll start with Mr. Urban.
And so that would make for a great discussion to have that connection behind the Covenant Ped Medical, because then you'd have this great shared parking agreement with them, because it's Dennis Salud's a dentist, and the medical building is medical. And except for Point Blank Range, they're not going to use their parking after 5 o'clock, especially on Fridays. And so now we're getting to that point of the shared parking that we've been talking about in ordinances, and getting to that level of cooperation from a planning aspect of it. So I would really, let's look at that.
We've not discussed that, so we're happy to look at it.
Wonderful, thank you.
Mr. Higdon.
Yeah, I have a question for one of our own here. Commissioner Query, what is the concern about exiting onto Old Monroe Road versus 51? I mean, both of them are pretty busy roads.
Both of them are busy, but the thought was if we let them come out on Monroe Road, which at that time was the busier, and I'm not sure which in the future is going to be the busier. We're not sure what they're going to do with Monroe Road either. So we've also got 51 that we have to worry about. But if they're also using that now for parking and for people to go in and out, you may want to read your ordinance and see whether you're supposed to be using it or not. That gate's not supposed to be open, is what my memory says.
And I don't think the suggestion was that they were using this. I think this parking area is being used, but I
That's what I'm
don't think they're using it for vehicular.
But if they're
purposes.
parking there, they're walking through to the,
I think they're walking there.
Okay, let's,
Currently, when you park at that upper parking lot off Monroe Road, you can access the park whether the gate's closed or not, because it's all connected there. So we have families that walk up, straight from the parking lot. So they are walking from there to the park.
let me make a point of clarification. There is no median up here so you can turn left or right out of that driveway. Down here on 51, you have a median, so you can only turn right in, right out on that road. So that's
fair.
That's a difference. Okay, so that was your question, Mr. Higdon. Now, Mr. Query, I believe you had your hand up next.
no, I've expressed my
Okay.
concerns.
So next we have Mr. Melton.
Walking through this in my head, I see us being able, as a result of this petition, at some point, to get an improvement on that parking lot. If the state of North Carolina and the child's parents feel it's safe enough for them to park there, I don't think it's up to us to jump in and say whether a 16-year-old or a 19-year-old or a 35-year-old should be parking there. But my question is, if we rewrite or approve this ordinance to allow that, if indeed it is restricted, is it appropriate and reasonable for us to make, as a part of this zoning, the requirement for them to have a police officer there at the events to direct traffic in and out?
Mr. Miller?
I mean,
Thank you.
That was a question.
That was a question for the petitioner?
Petitioner or staff, whoever felt it appropriate to answer.
Okay.
You can certainly ask, and we'll evaluate, and my understanding is being messaged to me that is the current protocol.
Okay. It's the
So-
current protocol, but is it the current protocol in the ordinance that requires it?
Well, I'll need to talk to your staff and city attorney and see if they would be comfortable with a
Okay.
commitment like that, were Covenant Day willing to make it.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Miller?
Thank you. Real quickly, I was here when they purchased this property. I do recall allowing them, in my recollection, allowing them to use it as parking. But the reason this was gated was so that they wouldn't use this as a through road, and it was because this through road is so close to everybody's backyard along here, it wasn't going to be allowed to be a cut through or things like that. It was allowed to be for parking, and there's a building there, but the reason that gate's there is so it wouldn't be for through traffic, with minor exceptions. That's what I recall. I just wanted to share it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller. Any other comments? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now enter into the public comment part of this, just to ensure the petitioner will have an opportunity to address the board on any issues that come from the public once the public hearing is done. So, is there anyone who would like to speak in support or opposition to this rezoning? If so, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Commissioners and Mayor. My name is Dan Church. I reside at 1728 Shadow Forest Drive. I want to thank you for a couple minutes here to speak with you all, and wanted to mention that I'm married to a lovely wife of 27 years. We've got 4 children, 3 boys and a daughter. The sons are 24, 22, 18, and 15, and we're an active sports family. All of my children started their soccer and athletic careers at Warner Park probably around the ages of 4 to 5, with the oldest having started almost 20 years ago. My 18-year-old son and my 15-year-old daughter are still at Covenant Day and enjoying the activities at Warner Park, and my 2 oldest sons did so through graduation. They ran the gambit. They played football, soccer, lacrosse, baseball, and then when it wasn't an organized sport, they played frisbee football, flag football, CrossFit training, and just about anything else when they were there on the fields. If I can give you one more important example for our family, it's that my oldest son, Cameron, played soccer his entire life. His senior year, he was All-State and awarded by the Matthews Mint Hill Boys Soccer Super Team as their Player of the Year. Every practice and home game was played at Warner Park. Every time he was written up, it ended with the words, "in Matthews, North Carolina." We want Warner Park to be that diamond in Matthews where opposing schools look forward to playing because of its excellent facilities and pristine fields. Over the last 20 years, Warner Park has been there for us and has allowed us to start small and grow. Warner Park holds a special place in our hearts and is important for us to see it improve its facilities as other private schools have done in the county. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Frances Ashley. I live at 629 Pleasant Pine Court. I live in Reed Hall, which is the neighborhood right next to Warner Park. And the reason I live in that neighborhood is because of Warner Park. My kids have been at Covenant Day for about 12 years. I drove every day my 3 kids from Valentine area up until the point where they were middle school and high school. That's when they started playing sports. And my husband and I acknowledged that that was a huge component of what made their school experience great, was that team spirit, that opportunity to be physically active, and a place that they felt very proud of their home fields. So we moved to Reed Hall to be next to the park. We plan on continuing to be there when our youngest graduates in 2 years. So we'll still be a property owner and still part of Reed Hall. And we are a close-knit, rather diverse group in our small community, which we love. We have picnics together, as we did 2 weeks ago. I've not personally heard anybody complain or have any opposition to Warner Park having the opportunity to simply be improved. I've had a chance to speak with the leader of our homeowners association, and he's stated that he's also not heard any opposition, but he has been in direct contact with Covenant Day on many occasions, and that as a homeowners association, we have no concerns at all about this being rezoned as being requested, and he has not heard any opposition from the neighbors within our neighborhood right next door. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Vonder. I live at 1410 Elmsford Lane with my wife, Kim, and we have 3 children. We moved from the Chicago area in 2006, and when building our current home in Matthews, we selected it due to its proximity to Covenant Day and desirable community feel with easy access to many excellent amenities. I'd like to make 3 brief comments supporting the rezoning for Warner Park. First, Covenant Day has been an excellent steward of its resources, which reflects favorably on the community. For example, my son plays baseball, and when hosting teams at Warner Park, I can say on numerous occasions the visitors have come there and said that this may be just the finest baseball field in the entire conference. That says a lot when you're playing Charlotte Christian, Latin, Country Day, Providence Day. Matthews has an excellent baseball facility that is one of the best in the entire state because of the good steward that Covenant Day is with the resources that we have. But the school does desire to do things well, and we want to use our resources to pave that parking lot. Right now, it's dust. It's dust debris when you're driving over there. I'm sure the neighbors aren't really excited about dust debris all the time, so we'd simply like to be able to pave the parking lot. Second, the school takes its safety measures very seriously. I've heard numerous points about safety and the importance for safety. Well, my son also plays football, and Covenant Day has a state-of-the-art lightning detection system for the students, their participants, everybody that's out there. Well, in the summer, when the thunderstorms come on in, the lightning detection system goes off, and right now the football boys have to huddle in the boys' bathroom. That's where their go-to point is for safety. We're simply just looking to build a modest field house to be able to provide safety for the students and the athletes that are there on this property. Lastly, the town of Matthews, on its website, properly boasts of our town having big city amenities with a small town feel. The site further states that Matthews is consistently ranked as one of the safest places to live and one of the best places to raise a family. I agree with that statement. It's a big reason why we live here, and Covenant Day has been a highlight for our family while residing in Matthews, and it continues to deliver an excellent education with excellent extracurricular activities that any big city can be proud of, while at the same time, its administrators, teachers, and coaches deliver a warm and personal feel of a small town. And they deliver that to 800-plus students and their families. So I'm thankful I made the decision to move to Matthews many years ago, and I'm thankful Covenant Day has aspired to similar goals as the community, and I urge you to support the rezoning for Warner Park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Philip Hansel. I live at 400 Neil Ridge Road. I've been the owner of this property for about 5 years, along with my wife. And I, too, as a young boy, enjoyed playing baseball, soccer, softball. And, you know, I was at the best of them hooping and hollering for my team. But noise is a concern for us on our street. So I would like to get some assurance that maybe the church could write it into their policy that they would ban, just like they would have a plan for no firearms on the property and no open adult beverages on the property, that they would have no cowbells, air horns, and bull horns. I don't think that would be too much to ask for them to ban something like that, because I have to listen to it. The other thing that came to mind while I was sitting here is Mary Jo, I think, referenced the football stadium. That was the words that you said. When I was at y'all's meeting, that was not the word used for that area. It was soccer field. And you assured me, you said permanent stadium, and I asked you very clearly, and you said there will be portable seating, not permanent stadium. Okay.
I think you have me confused with the applicant. I work for the town, so
Okay.
it's not my meeting.
Okay. Okay. Well, I can't see what it says right there, but what does that say? Does that say football stadium? Okay. Well, the first one did.
I may have referenced that.
Okay, okay. Along with, there was no mention of any greenway on the left-hand side of the property. It was proposed on the right-hand side of the property. Okay. But that's about all I have to say. But I would urge the board to be mindful of the homeowners. As I said before, I was a young person too, and I wanted to pull for the home team and have a good time and holler and stuff like that. But I think we could do without the cowbells and the bullhorns and those kind of things like that. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Deanna Burns, Sardis Forest resident, and I reside at 400 Neil Ridge. And I met many of you 8 years ago when the property was being introduced, and we did come to you multiple times with several issues with the lighting, and you did a great job, Covenant Day, putting on the light shields. And then we had no screening. Everyone up in the ball field could look out in our backyards, in our bathrooms, in our bedrooms. We had no screening. And so you do have screening trees, and I'm grateful for that also. But so my understanding when we attended the meeting to talk about the proposed changes were two things that stuck in my mind for concern, just from a resident, not from the headmaster, not from the attorney, and not from someone that attends periodically to encourage your student athlete, but for someone that actually lives back behind the park, who lives with the park. So that's my perspective. So I want you to just kind of keep that in mind as I proceed. This one? Which one do I make it advance? Sorry, I'm just getting familiar with the equipment. So it's a grainy shot, but I just wanted to show you, this is from the back line of our property, and that is the road that you're talking about. And the road that you're referring to would connect, that was my understanding, Monroe Road to Highway 51 or Matthews Township Parkway. That would stream the traffic just that close behind our house, okay? So again, I've said consider just from the neighbor's perspective, if you can, try to put yourself in our shell. Does this have a pointer? Oh, here we go. So our property is right here. We are the closest aspect. Someone had mentioned about the property owners that are closer into the park. So there's a cluster of us that are closest to the softball field versus the baseball field versus the nice folks from Reed Hall. We are right here in the thick of things. So I just put that slide up so you could see my perspective and where I live and my husband Phil. So I threw this out from government studies about neighborhood characters, and there are two definitions that negatively impact the neighborhood. They're noise and traffic. I'm sure that's no surprise to you to hear that. So I'm just saying that for Warner Park to be that close to us, it has been an impediment to our right to a peaceful home existence. Often, particularly on Friday nights, coming home from a long day at work, I just want to sit out on my porch or in my backyard and do gardening, and I am driven inside because of crowd noise and yelling and cheering and the mechanical noises of the cowbells and the air horns. I can't take it, so I have to retreat in and close my door. And that's it for my backyard existence when some of the activities are occurring. And so I'm telling you, 8 years ago, we had talked about things, and so we had issues with the loud PA system, and we still have periodically issues with that loud PA system, despite talking to some of the leadership about adjusting it and setting volumes, levels, and not to exceed that. But even though we have these conversations periodically, the sounds are exceeded. I can hear the player's name, I can hear their number, I can hear their score, I can hear the songs, and I can hear the lyrics to the songs. And I just showed you where my house is and the further aspect of the park. And then we talked about the artificial noisemakers, and they are quite loud. And then I'm saying, if you route that road, then we're also going to deal with traffic noises. And you know, students often play their car radios and they make noise in their car. Okay, so take that into consideration. And I just threw this slide in because the health consequences of noise really are significant. You can just kind of read through some of that. Here's our perspective. So 9 months out of the year, we live there, and 9 months out of the year, these folks can attend for a couple hours, and then they go home to their peaceful backyard. Right? They can do anything they want in their backyard. They're not subjected to sound, whereas we can't get rid of it. You know, we live there. So I know your ordinance for sound impacting is any mechanical noise that registers at 60 decibels. I want you to consider also perhaps looking at this with any non-mechanical noise, because it does generate noise, and I'm going to show you some examples. So I'm just saying, my understanding is you're going to increase the seating to 2,000 seats. So if you imagine 2,000 people in your backyard at any given time, in a sports event, they might generate some noise. And then I'm also going to imagine just streaming traffic behind your house, up to 200 cars, because my understanding is 200 lots from Monroe Road and their existing lots. That's 200 either cars or trucks or school buses or activity buses. And I just mentioned car stereos. Here's just some example of sound measurements in decibels. All this information is very researchable and it's very easy to find. So a car horn is 100 decibels. An air horn, I was surprised, 129. Cowbells, look how loud those are, 110. And then some trucks and motorcycles and school buses, they generate loud sound, okay? These are also sounds from striking, and again, all this information is readily available if you search on Google or you search at, I'm not sure, an athletic organization. So these are just how loud. I'm just giving you the impact of how much sound is occurring in our backyard. Ball hitting, 82, a coach can yell, the cheering crowds, 89. So I have two thoughts for you. This first one I said is part of this rezoning, put in conditionings, maybe consider rerouting that road. Rerouting, I know that's expensive, but moving it off the neighborhood would help reduce some of the sound. In my other eureka moment, which I didn't have an opportunity to create a slide for that, is consider, which would be, I think, less expensive, consider taking that softball field, this one, that's so close, it's closer to any homes, right up here where we live, take this softball field and move it down here, move it along this industrial side. You would do us a world of good, a world of favor, because you have stadiums, or you have, I guess it's called stadium seating here, where you have your crowds that cheer, and you have, the cowbells, and you have all the noisemakers. Move them here. Move the whole thing over here. I would appreciate that more than I can tell you. Because again, I live right in here. This is my home. I don't come here for 3 hours and then go home and come back every couple of weeks. This is where we live, okay? And I put down suggestible. Maybe you can ban these air horns. Look, on an average of 129 decibels, you're going to cause some hearing damage too for people that have to hear it, that sit beside of it. That's bad. The cowbells, we just talked about how loud those are. Set limits on the PA volume. Please do that. Do that now. Make that part of your your rezoning conditions. Set limits so we don't have to have for 8 years conversation. We could hear everything. It's loud. And I appreciate your time tonight, everyone. Oh, and one more thing. If this was the first time I had heard about proposing the Greenway through Vine Arden and roping it behind the neighborhood, I would like to be part of that. Because I will tell you from the history of being part, or since the park was built, you have had people illegally park on the Vine Arden, blocking myself. There are 2 homes on Vine Arden. It's teeny small. There's 2 homes left and right, and each one have a driveway. And we've had people block in. They're not intending to, but they're making space to get in, to enter the park, block us on our driveway entrance on this teeny road called Vine Arden. Streaming traffic, if you start that, even if it's foot traffic can follow with car traffic. You're going to create more of a nightmare scenario. And again, we had talked about this, and Commissioner Query, I remember 7 or 8 years ago in a public setting, you said you did not realize the impact this would have on the neighborhood. And at the time, it made me feel good to hear, but then the other side, the mixed feeling, I was sad because it already happened and you couldn't pull it back. So my message for you, you have an opportunity to help the neighbors once again, and I really hope that you do so. And thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, I promise to make it brief. It's late, and thank you for your service to our town, first of all. One of the things
Can you state your name?
I'm
and
sorry.
address, please?
I'm sorry. David Johnson, 416 Sadie Drive. right in downtown Matthews. We love Matthews, and we love Covenant Day, and we love trees, and we definitely, living on Sadie Drive, I totally get backing up to a school and hearing noise, hearing softball, seeing lights, having a greenway. So I get the sensitivity to this. I think we're, hopefully, we can put some things in perspective, is that the school is not asking, there's two different conversations happening. One is the greenway and the A-B option, and I think let's put that aside and try to figure out, because I think that is crucial to the trees, to your point. But what the school is asking for is just an enhancement of the fields. Most of this was brought up because people were going, there's already football games happening. The noise is already happening. So we're not asking for more noise. Really, it started with, can we just get bleachers so parents can sit? And then it kind of opened up this whole can of worms. And so I equate it to backing up to Matthews Elementary, and Matthews Elementary adding playgrounds back there, and maybe one day enhancing their track in the elementary school. We as neighbors would love that. Enhance Matthews Elementary. Continue to build that up. Our biggest questions would be yours and some of these of, are you going to tear down a bunch of trees around us, or are you going to add a bunch of lights? And if you're not doing those two things, which Covenant Day is not asking for, they're basically saying, can we enhance our athletic facility? We're already using it for football. There's already noise there, which kids are going to make, which we hear in our backyard, and it's fine. It happens and it stops. But really, that's all we're asking for you to consider tonight, is just this is more of a request, not the path. That's a separate request, but the request from the school, can we enhance our facilities? And with hopefully taking down minimal trees and minimal lighting in respect to the residents there. So thanks for considering this tonight.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Erb. I live at 406 Neil Ridge Road. It's kind of funny listening to everyone. If the different perspectives you get from whether you're in the revenue stream or not in their revenue stream. So you're not going to hear a lot from me as far as, but I do want to tell you I have the immense displeasure of being on this list, this adjacent property contact list. I mean, here we go again, having to fight for our neighborhood's rights and just to sustain some type of quality of life. And tonight, but we're talking about the rezoning. I'm not really opposed. I'm opposed to it from a perspective. I'm not opposed that my beliefs are if you can afford something, maintain something, and be responsible for that, you should be able to have it as a property owner. That's my personal belief. However, that's the key here. Being responsible. This organization has not demonstrated a sustained level of operational responsibility, and that's in its current footprint. So anything else you want to do on top of that, you're just adding on. And I apologize for everybody. I'm kind of fighting a summer cold, so I don't want to touch really anything, and I'll stay away from everybody if I can. And the reason is simple, why they've been so operationally irresponsible. It boils down to this. They don't care. That's it.
Mr. Erb, you need to speak into the microphone.
Okay, thank you,
the board,
Mr.
please.
Mayor.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I should be pointing to you guys instead of him. But they don't care. They do not have a problem in not taking responsibilities for the noise or other actions. And they operate under their own moral code book. Let me define, though, who I'm talking about, because I want to make sure you guys know who, when I say the organization, I'm not talking about the kids. The kids are wonderful. Not talking about the parents. Not talking about the teachers. I don't know anything. I don't know about them. I'm not talking about the congregation. I'm talking about a small subset group of decision makers. They're basically made up of the elders, as I understand it, the elders, the pastor, department heads, various sundry people are on this. These people don't care. I find them smart business people. I see how they structure themselves, how they operate, but they operate at a level below ethical standards. And again, take no responsibility. And this goes back years, this goes back before they even cut the trees out, when they put just a walkway in around and people could walk around. We would have people in our backyards at night that you could hear. And we asked them to put up a fence. And that's when you started hearing the first thing I found, that they never had money to make any type of improvement. So finally, we kept asking, and 2 years later, they finally put up a sign that told people they could not enter. Because late at night, people just got lost in there. They come through our yards. They just didn't know. And it's a little unnerving when it's late at night and you can hear crackling of the leaves and you know someone's out there. So finally, this whole, when I approached them on this, they said, if anything happens, call the Matthews police. And I told them, I said, this is your property. They said, no, we don't. Just go to the Matthews police. Don't even involve us. So this is the start of what I've seen sustained. This is a group that does not mind inflicting harm to our neighborhood to build their brand. And it's amazing to me. But and let me just talk case in point. Let's talk about the speakers. A number of them, the overhead speakers, everybody knows about them. It's funny, I was talking with a policeman a while back ago, and I was sharing a story with him how
Mr.
loud
Herb,
it is to us.
You need to address the board.
Okay. How loud it is to us. And they shared the story that they can hear it quite well from their, Cruise Road substation. They can, and that's quite a ways. That's because noise carries. You would not, it's unbelievable how noise carries in that area. And there has been several complaints to the police about this noise. There have been to the school about this noise. I'm sure several of you have heard comments about the noise, the speakers, why they have to be played at the levels that they are, when they're just trying to point it right down to people a couple hundred feet away, if at the max. But this organization is aware of the issues, but it continues to occur constantly. Why? Because they don't care. And and there's two things that really, out of all this, irritate me, continue to irritate me. And this one is, you can have organizations that run at the very bottom, skid the kind of bottom. I don't want to say sleazy, but I guess I will. You can still be an active organization. But what concerns me is that this group teaches children. They see the behaviors demonstrated by the people that operate this park. And, like I say, I've worked with people for 30 years. I've worked all over the world, worked with people all over the world, blue collar, white collar. And I can tell you this group that I've had to work with in this is probably some of the lowest people with the lowest level of integrity that I can tell you about. And what's shameful, I think, and again, this is a perspective because we're getting beat up, that this group is okay with teaching children to put greed before God, because they have a need for greed here. So let me talk about the softball field real quick. Could you put up that 3 of 12? I'm sorry. I was going to use her slide. I just want to make a real quick observation so you know where I am, and I really don't want to touch
sir.
3, I think it's 3, you gotta go up.
Okay.
One more right there.
Okay. Is that what you're looking for?
One more. I don't think that's a little higher. Perfect, right there. I surely don't want to touch anything. Mr. Mayor, would you mind pointing out approximately, I would ask any one of you guys, but it's at the softball field. Follow that line of trees right there, okay? You see how that runs? And go up with it, Mr. Mayor, and stop. That's where my property begins. That's where exactly my property line. So the softball field, and you're good, sir. Let me just make sure you all understand what you signed us up for. They are 50 feet. They're actually, they built on the 0 lot line. 10 feet for that road, and then the softball field starts. So you've got the dugouts, you've got the bleachers, you've got screaming people. They put the working end of this field against the homes. And if you'll notice, there's no, right at my property line, the shrubbery, the arborvitaes, they've ended. And that's not accidentally. This was their small and petty way to get back at me for standing up like I am right now and saying this is not right. What they do is below the level of honor and integrity. And so you understand, again, the distance from my property to that field is 50 feet. You put the 10 feet, you get 60 feet. That's from maybe, Mr. Mayor, to the outside of that room, to the other side of that room, I'm going to guess, maybe 50, 60 feet. You guys know more, they probably throw this out all the time. That distance does not, let me make sure, I forgot what I was telling you about. The distance between that is 50 feet, and that's how close they can put 60 to 100 people. I'm just throwing, you usually have about 15, 20 kids on a team. You start throwing in coaches, umpires, everybody, managers, whatever. You've got 50 people sitting on that field. Even if they just bring us, sometimes they don't have many people. They only have a dozen or so. But that's 60-some people. That's 60-some people sitting against that back wall there, yelling, screaming, chanting, doing horns. It's loud. If you guys don't think this is loud, it's incredibly loud. And because they chose not to put the screening up, I don't know if that was intentional. In the proposed plan that you guys signed off on, it showed screening all the way around. But I assume they can make the decisions who they want to screen and who they don't want to screen. But that's concerning. But really, what has concerned me more is the 50-foot buffer. You've let them move that fence from 50 foot to the 20-foot mark. So they have 30 feet of undisturbed buffer on their property that I see them clearing on my end. And when I say clearing, they take chainsaws, they're clearing the trees out, and they actually have even mowed it to about the 2 foot. I mean, you could